Thank you very much. I'm really happy to see you all here today. And I would like to start with my thanks to Professor Peter Hong for the invitation to speak to you about the issues that are extremely important for us Ukrainians today. And if I may, I will use my PowerPoint slides. And I'm happy to see so many people today who are interested in the humanities. Truly speaking, in our consumerist world, humanities now are not in great favor. At first sight, they do not produce goods or technologies. However, they stand first. They are number one in education for humanity. And they can save humanity. That is, they can save people of the world. I'm speaking to you from Ukraine. Now I've moved from Western Ukraine to Central Ukraine, and I'm not far from Kiev. And today, and for the past actually 3.5 months, my country has been severely suffering from inhuman war. That is a country where each day starts with a minute of silence as a tribute to the memory of those who have fallen victim to Russians' inhuman atrocities and to the genocide of Ukrainian people. Here you know what I mean. As for us, even a thought of one nation intentionally destroying the other one is inhuman. However, I will speak to you about humanity in 2 meanings. As human beings living on Earth, and about it as a quality of being human. I'm going to speak about the role of university curriculum and the humanities as its part that educate for humanity. I will also give you some insights into the case of Ukraine as a demonstration of what happens if things go in the wrong direction. Education really has the power to transform people's minds. University education empowers people with the talent to be humane, which is the only way to preserve humanity. Universities are not just well-equipped places to produce people with diplomas who can take a well-paid jobs in societies that recognize the value of higher education, and most societies do. The university is a universe with a special environment created to cater for intellectuals, people who have the power to transform the world for the better. The people who are humanists, in the meaning of having a strong interest in or concern for human welfare, values, and dignity. And what is interesting, that an inseparable part of being a humanist in that sense is being a humanist, a person devoted to or versed in the humanities. Actually, that is what I'm going to demonstrate today. With the Ukrainian autonomy received, some universities excluded some elements of the humanitarian component from their curriculum. But the National Agency for Ensuring Higher Education Quality appealed to them, stating that the university is not exclusively about teaching and research. It also has the third mission, which is serving society. And this mission cannot be achieved without humanities. At first sight, the courses might seem purely theoretical and remote from real life. However, at a closer look, and believe us, our look today is not just close, we are speaking from inside of the problem. We all realize that the humanities may serve either a noble purpose of development, prosperity, and well-being, or the purpose of destruction, war, poverty, and hunger. The humanities are an inseparable part of liberal education in Ukrainian universities. The courses generally found in the university curricula are history and culture of Ukraine, foreign languages, philosophy, Ukrainian language, political and sociological sciences, old or classical languages that are Latin or Old Slavic. In addition, the informal university education offers options for performing arts, music, applied arts, etc. They are not included in the official curriculum. They are optional, and students can choose to attend the classes if they are eager to. Why these courses, you may ask? Because they are about sending a clear message to Ukrainians as a nation and to the world that had known so little about Ukraine before this horrible war in the center of Europe directed the spotlight at our country. Our land is constantly suffering from bombing and missile strikes that serve Russians' mission, which is infamous, and the mission is to level Ukraine to the ground, to bring its population to extinction by killing people or deporting them to depressive regions of Russia. For many years, Kremlin has been pushing the argument that Ukraine's claim to statehood is entirely baseless. On the 21st of February, 2 days before the full-scale war in Ukraine, in a television address to the nation, Putin explicitly denied that Ukraine had ever had real statehood. And he said that the country was an integral part of Russia's old history, culture, and spiritual space. So he subjected Ukrainians to genocide that started on the 24th of February 2022. Russia shattered the peace in Europe by unleashing the war with the justification that Ukraine was a constant threat and Russia could not feel safe, develop, and exist. Russia could not feel safe, develop, and exist. Why? Because Ukraine is an independent country of free people? It is hard to understand. Our capital, Kiev, is an ancient city with more than 15 centuries history, a precious pearl of European civilization, a blessed eternal city with incredible spirit that holds a prominent place in historical, cultural, and spiritual legacy of mankind. It is a free city of free people. 1,000 years ago, Kiev was the center of one of the most developed states in Europe. By the way, Kiev's dukes established family relations with most of European royal dynasties. So when we say today that Ukraine is an integral part of the European family of nations, this statement has not only symbolic, but also a real meaning. As you see, when Kiev was fastly developing, when there were a lot of churches and monasteries, there was still a forest in the place where Moscow appeared. In fact, Putin did not give Ukrainians any other choice but to win this war and prove that Ukraine has the right to exist. Besides the victory on the battlefield, Ukrainians should send the clear message that it has its history, culture, and spiritual space and has had them for centuries. The vital mission of the History of Ukraine and Culture of Ukraine course is to prove the facts that Ukraine is a country with ancient roots. And the university students are absorbing this idea. They are reading it, touching it, and even performing it. Students of my university, which is Pavlo Tečena Uman State Pedagogical University, explore history on the ground, 30 kilometers from Uman, where the campus is located. For decades, they have been participating in archaeological excavations at the site of one of the oldest cultures in Europe, the Cucuteni-Tripila culture that began about 5,500 years before Christ and covered a substantial part of current Ukrainian territory. Tripilians, or the children of the sun, were peaceful people living from agriculture, and the students know it as they participate in the exposure, processing, and recording of archaeological remains. Students follow the found models of the buildings that existed then at the time of Tripilian culture. They rebuilt those houses and they burned them to reconstruct the ancient inhabitants' actions before moving to new places. As I mentioned, they lived from agriculture. That's why they grew plants, then burned their houses and moved to other places. Ukrainians also live from agriculture. Ukraine is one of the biggest agricultural countries in the world, with one difference. We do not burn our houses. We want to live on our land. We want to stay here. The idea of the children of the sun is present in the courses of visual arts, where the students restore ornaments and symbols, and performing arts, where the students dance the history. In learning the history of Ukraine course, the students are looking for senses to explain why the events happened and what significant and minor causes made them possible. In addition, they are looking for precedents, as those can explain a lot. As an example, we can trace the history of Russian-Ukrainian relations and can draw the conclusions that the war has lasted for centuries. And here are some historical parallels in Russian-Ukrainian relations. Historians think that the first episode was in 1169, when Vladimir Suzdal Prince Andrei Bogolubsky, by the way, Bogolubsky is translated as loving God, but actually he didn't. He captured Kiev and gave the city to his soldiers for 3 days of looting and plundering. Nothing has changed in more than 800 years. In 2022, Russian soldiers go on looting, raping, and killing. The only difference is that now they have more modern weapons. They do not have mercy. The cruelty of the Russian atrocities against peaceful Ukrainian people make it impossible to believe that human beings can do it. This is a lesson that the history course has taught our student. This is a lesson that history has taught the whole world. There have been numerous examples in history when Russians, or to be more exact here in this case, Soviets, wanted to destroy Ukrainian population by mass famine, the Holodomor, so-called, which was an intentional artificial famine in Ukraine organized by the Soviet regime that killed millions of Ukrainians. Just fancy. Ukraine is an agricultural country, and it has always been. And they managed to organize and impose this famine on the people who grew crops, who grew wheat that could feed a lot of people in Europe and in other parts of the world. Estimation of the number of people who died of starvation varies from around 4 to 10 million, because this is very difficult to trace how many people died then. Now it is officially recognized by the international community as genocide of Ukrainians. Nothing has changed in 100 of years. In 2022, in sieged and occupied cities and villages, Russians are now creating conditions for people to die of starvation. This is a picture of Mariupol a month ago. Moreover, by blocking the export of Ukrainian wheat and Ukrainian crops, they bring about a global food crisis that is becoming worldwide famine. That is another lesson that the history course has taught our students. They have learned it from books, archives, and word-of-mouth stories that have been passed in their families from their elders who witnessed the famine and survived. I also heard these stories from my grandparents who just told me that in their family there died 3 children of famine. But my grandparents managed to survive, and I'm grateful to the laws for that. Another parallel is connected with deportation, which throughout history has become a usual practice with Russians. It has always been connected with ethnic cleansing and cultural genocide, the brightest example of which is the deportation of Crimean Tatars in 1944. When in cattle trains, the Tatar population of Crimea, primarily women, children, and the elderly, were deported several thousand kilometers away. This is exactly the Crimea that was taken by Russians in 2014. It was illegally taken and it's not recognized by the world community. In the de-Tatarization campaign, many thousands Tatars died, either during the deportation or in exile, due to the harsh conditions. Now, Russians are running the intense campaign of de-Ukrainization to erase even traces of Ukraine's existence. Especially, they kidnap Ukrainian children, take them to Russia, where they give them to Russian families. So this is the extreme cynicism, just to make Ukrainian children forget where they belong, and maybe to go to war against their motherland later. And it is not only about territory, as Russian territory is 28 times bigger than Ukrainian. Why not take effort and create good conditions for the life of their people there? It's hard to understand. But what Russians do now, they bomb, kill, rape, and torture. And they get the greatest pleasure from killing children and destroying schools. Some schools were destroyed with people, like the school in Bilogorivka, Lugansk region, where on the 8th of May, practically all the village inhabitants were hiding. You know, in villages, school is a kind of the center of the cultural center of the village. So they were hiding there. They were hiding in the school and they were buried there. As the bomb from aircraft was purposefully sent to school. In the same way as bombs were sent to Mariupol theater, in spite of the fact that the word children, you see 2 words, children in Ukrainian, was written there, and it was clearly seen from the plane. I guess actually that was the reason why the explosion epicenter was exactly there. It was another step to the extinction of new generation of Ukrainians. And now they are saving, as they call it, they are saving people from sieged cities to deport them to depressive regions like Russian Sakhalin. And instead, they are planning to populate Ukraine with the people who do not want to know the taste of freedom. This is another lesson that the history of Ukraine has taught us. All these multi-level perceptions of the history of Ukraine and living it through serve the mission of preserving the world from the so-called history reframing or rewriting or changing events. As the leading Russian strategist Sergei Pereslegin put it, it makes history an absolute weapon that crosses the opponent out of reality. Instead of the next generation of opponents, people who are born belong to the country that privatized the history process. The semantic war is the war for the right to name phenomena and events. And it is the highest level of the war. And it is how Anton Vaino, head of Putin's administration, put it. So our war is not just the war on the battlefield. It is the war for the meaning. It is semantic war at the same time. Today, Russian intellectuals speak about the end of social sciences in Russia. But my question is it today that the end has come? Or maybe it came many years ago when they accepted the pressure as usual and filtered their works through external and internal censorship. And only now they have understood that it is the deadliest end ever. As it is the country for which teaching democracy, critical thinking, and human rights are a threat. This is how Russian educational policymakers present the courses. So in Russia, there are no courses in the curriculum about democracy, human rights, and critical thinking, as they present the threat to the state. Instead, in Russian universities, there are teachers who justify the aggression and deliver lessons of the so-called patriotism to Russian students. On the walls, there are portraits of Russian killers who are now in Ukraine killing peaceful Ukrainian population. You know, they are marked with the letter Z. And in Russia, on the wall, they have pictures of those Z heroes, and they just really call them heroes. Heroes who are killing Ukrainians. There are university rectors who are supporting the inhuman slaughter in Ukraine. And those rectors wrote an open letter that they support Putin's politics in Ukraine. That is what Russian intellectuals think about it. Maybe they do not think it, but they sign those things. There are also intellectuals who do not support aggression, but they keep silent. That is their silent support to aggression. The kind of hatred demonstrated by Russia does not come overnight. It may come only gradually through education, through media, through fear and silent acceptance. And it is not about Putin exclusively. No, it is about millions of Russians supporting him. It is about people who have not learned the history lessons. As our President Zelensky put it, Ukrainians are one book cleverer than Russians, and this book is history book. No wonder that Russians are burning Ukrainian books. They have a list of authors and books and even school history books to burn. They have been preparing for aggression for a long, long time. But the history of Ukraine is not only in books. It is underneath the ground, and our students excavate it. It is in archives, and our students decipher it. It is in family stories, and the students hear them. It is in the eyes of students, and the students paint it. It is in the body, and the students dance it. 2 days ago, Russian ex-president Dmitry Medvedev cynically wrote in his telegram that in 2 years, Ukraine will not exist. But this is a land of our ancestors. This is a land of our children and grandchildren. I want to tell you a short story of my younger grandson. He's now 4 and he's here in Ukraine. He asked, "Can people see souls?" I say, "No, souls are invisible." He said, "I want to be a soul." "Why?" I cried. "Because I do not want Russians to see me." I answered, "But we won't see you either, and we will be very, very sad without you." "No," he said, "I want to be the soul that Russians cannot see, but good people can see." I do not want my grandchildren to be souls. I want them to live long and healthy life in the country where they were born, in Ukraine that is free and prosperous. What would you feel if someone came to your house and said that you and your family do not have the right to live here? So this someone is burning your house. Even more, that you and your family do not have the right to live. So this someone is killing you and your family. Would you like to let somebody who hates you rewrite your life and say that you have never existed? No one wants it. That is why we Ukrainians are fighting for our history, our lives, and our existence. We are fighting for our language, as the language issue is one of the most important in the semantic war. For centuries, Russians have been trying to impose their language on Ukrainians. There have been plenty of ways to do it. First of all, there have been numerous cases of the prohibition of publishing books in the Ukrainian language, burning Ukrainian books, prohibiting to use Ukrainian as the language of education, religious practices, and law proceedings. An infamous example of prohibiting the Ukrainian language is Valuyev's circular, by which many publications, religious, educational, and literature recommended for the use in primary literary training of the commoners were forbidden in Ukrainian. The circular stated that a separate Little Russian language, that is what they call Ukrainian, never existed, does not exist, and shall not exist. The tongue is nothing but Russian, corrupted by the influence of Polish. It was in 1863. Nothing has changed in the rhetoric of Russian rulers. In Putin's speeches and publications, we find the same ideas. There is no such country as Ukraine. There is no such language as Ukrainian. Using mass media, they have been pouring their propaganda, imposing the idea of inferiority of the Ukrainian language that, as they put it, is not suitable for research works and intellectual writing, as it does not have appropriate terminology. They spend billions on delivering the Russian content, demonstrating that it is cool for young people to speak Russian. They are leading the semantic war for the right to name things and create senses. They are leading linguicide, that is language genocide, leading to language death. Moreover, they started the war justifying it by their desire to save Russian-speaking population of Ukraine from oppression. from oppression that has never existed. And in the cities, they have been completely destroyed by Russians. They used to live Russian-speaking population. And the fact of their speaking Russian did not save them from brutal violence. This is the case when nothing separates people more than the common language. And this is the case that when including the Ukrainian language in the university curriculum serves the noble purpose of saving not only the language, but the people speaking it. In the course, the students do not just study grammar and vocabulary. They are looking into language history and connections to the old Slavic language. They are exploring regional dialects and folklore, and they are looking for hidden senses and symbols. Now I will demonstrate you some interdisciplinary projects that the students of Uman State University are doing. And these interdisciplinary projects connect language and literature, history and arts. For example, our students have their summer folklore field practice, where they stay in villages, study local history, meet people, write down their stories, transcribe dialects, restore traditional ornaments of the household, and embroidery of Ukrainian national costumes. They approach the history as in the urbanized world. Special atmosphere is usually, I will now show the video. Special atmosphere is usually preserved in villages, but not in big cities. So in the rural areas, they can take the history and add them to the history lessons. So this is the first interdisciplinary project, which demonstrates the defense, the so-called defense of our folklore practice. You see the people on the stage are wearing national costumes and they're wearing special embroidered shorts and they are the symbol of our country. And this handmade embroidery carries a great and deep meaning and has a lot of symbolic ideas. Now I'm actually wearing one. That is not that we wear them every day, but we wear them on special occasions to show where we belong. Also, the girls before marriage used to wear special flower wreaths with colored ribbons of different color. They were the symbol of purity. And in the next interdisciplinary project I'm going to demonstrate here, you will see the girls wearing those wreaths, but at different stages of a woman's life. And black ribbons show the grief and tragedy that they might have. This composition is called Ukraine, Beloved Girl, Bride, and we do, as it shows the parallel between a life of a common Ukrainian girl with her hopes for a happy life ruined by the war, and Ukraine that is striving for development and freedom in spite of all Russian attempts to completely ruin it and enslave it. That shows the picture of what is happening today here in Ukraine every day, and what made a lot of Ukrainian women and children flee from the war abroad to other countries in Europe and even to other continents. So they had to leave their husbands and fathers and brothers here in Ukraine to defend the country, and they were to preserve the lives of their children. And the next interdisciplinary project I will demonstrate to you is the combination of Ukrainian literature, music, history, and choreography. At its core is the poem of the famous Ukrainian writer Lesia Ukrainka. In Latin, it sounds contra spem spero, which in English means I hope without hope. It was written in 1890, and the idea is very deep and symbolic for Ukraine today. The quintessence of the composition is the strength and the will to live. So the final words this character pronounces is I will live. Sorry, maybe the video is a little bit amateur, but I do hope that it will show you the atmosphere.
Геть думали хмари осінні, бо ж тепер весна золота. жалю в голосі проминуть молоді літа. Ні, я хочу крізь сльози сміятись, серед лиха співати пісні, без надії таки сподіватись, жити хочу, геть думи сумні. Я на гору круту крем'яною буду камінь важкий підіймать і, несучи вагу ту страшну, буду пісню веселу співать. Вдовгу темною нічку не видно, не стулю ні на хвильку очей, все шукатиму зірку провідну, ясну владу темних очей. Ні, я буду крізь сльози сміятись, серед лиха співати пісні, без надії таки сподіватись, жити хочу, геть думи сумні. Так я буду крізь сльози сміятись, серед лиха співати пісні, без надії таки сподіватись, буду жити, геть думи сумні. Буду жити, буду жити.
Yes, Ukraine will live. Ukraine's victory will come, however difficult it might be. However, it will come with great sacrifice, with thousands of soldiers and peaceful citizens killed by Russians, with millions of Ukrainians who fled abroad or were displaced in Ukraine, with ruined kindergartens, schools, universities, theaters, museums, houses, and infrastructure. All this could have been avoided if education had done its most important job, based on history lessons. Education for peace is something that we, alas, have overlooked and neglected. And the war we are suffering from is not just Russia's war against Ukraine. It is the war for honesty, straightforwardness, for democracy, and for peaceful world order. And what is the role of universities in the age of disruption, crisis, and change? Ideally, they are to perform their unique function as enablers of constructive change and peaceful life, ensuring that the world is moving towards sustainable development goals. And what does the war have to do with the goals? There are 17 of them. I will list them here to remind you of the order in which they appear. No poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economics, growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequality, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice and strong institutions, partnerships for the goals, and that is the order. Everybody would like to attain the goals, but sometimes it is impossible. If goal 16, which is peace, justice, and strong institutions, does not become number one, all other goals may become unattainable. As a result of the war, The global food supply has been severely disrupted. Russians bomb fields, burn and steal crops. They block exports from Ukraine to the countries that need it desperately. There may be poverty. There will be poverty. There may be starving people. There will be starving people. New global waves of migration may slow economic growth and give rise to inequalities. With Russia's blackmail, energy may become unaffordable. Fires caused by missile strikes and atomic stations without safety control may and will lead to severe population pollution and climate change. Our planet is so tiny. We all can suffer from mad ambitions to return to the world map, the Soviet Union, an authoritarian country of terror. Ukrainians do not want back in the USSR. We want to live in our country. We want to live in peace. We want our planet to have the future. We hope that the voice of Ukraine matters, and we do know that the voice of humanities in the university curriculum is crucial. The humanities educate people to be humane and thus have a tremendous potential to save humanity, the human being living on the planet. However, to boost their force, we all should make an effort to create boundaries for the violence. In the case of Russian-Ukrainian war, which is the arena for unjustified aggression, the statement that both parties are guilty is not to the point. The point is that to achieve peace, both parties should want it. So far, we want to stay alive. Russia wants us dead. However, even under the circumstances, Ukrainian universities will take all their effort to teach humanity, to learn humanity, to feel the humanities with a new context, the context of Ukraine's agency, dignity, and self-respect, the qualities that are characteristic of an independent state with deep roots, well-known history, bright culture, and unique language. Thank you.